The Outsiders Project, giving voice to the unheard.
Hi and welcome to the Outsiders Project podcast. We show that people sidelined from society can write, perform and create work of exceptional quality. You can find us on social media. Look for the Outsiders Project Boscombe. Today I'm interviewing Shelley, who's been with the project for 2 years. And now here comes the content warning. It's outsider art, so it always has strong content. Okay, thanks for coming, Shelley, and for talking about the Outsiders Project. I don't want to start with your childhood, but really I thought it'd be nice to start with what you're working on at the moment. Like, what are you writing at the minute?
I think lockdown's really affected my writing. At the moment I'm not particularly writing anything. I'm working on the tattoo project, which is kind of quite cool.
Do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah. So we're doing another show, and in the show it will be all about tattoos and what they mean to us, and personally what my tattoos stories behind them and stuff like that. So, it's going to be quite cool, I think.
Okay, so are you going to show your tattoos in the show?
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. You've got a few, I've got to say. And how does that work, that writing process? Because I understand that you write really differently. Like the two pieces we're going to hear later are very much your writing that you write completely on your own, quietly away. But when you're writing for the human voice, like for performance, do you have a different process?
Yeah, I find it really hard to find comedy in anything I write. I think it's kind of cathartic to me to end up writing quite internal thought processes. So when you write for a performance, you've got to take everything into consideration. And where I haven't got a lot of experience in that, I rely heavily on you now.
Yeah, so it's quite hard to describe what we do. Have a go.
So we'll have a conversation, and it's quite natural. It's always been quite natural between us, and I'll end up telling you a story without realising that I'm giving you a few little gems, and then we'll end up writing it and going back over it, and if there's anything you need in it, stuff like that. So that's cool. Okay,
I think it's called dictation, Shelley.
All right.
You're making it sound like I do the writing and I don't write one word of it.
No.
What's really fascinating is it's a kind of oral composition. So you're sitting there delivering it. But because you're actually speaking it, of course, when it comes out, it's really speakable.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Because there's a big difference, isn't there, between writing down on a page on your own and actually saying it aloud. Yeah. So I'm sitting in the room and I actually type up as you're speaking.
As I'm speaking. And there's always like what my partner would say as Shelleyisms come out, like a bit of dry wit and a bit of self-deprecating that we can use, so that's quite cool.
So you've got your voice. You feel there's that your sense of your voice through your work.
It's very different to when I'm writing. Although it's not poetry, poetry. It's not rhyming. There's definitely a rhythm to when I write on the page, and I kind of like to do that on my own without anyone around. So it's different. Whereas it's more. I think it's more fun to dictate, and we can play with it a bit more.
Yeah, it's more collaborative, isn't it? And working much more as part of a team. I wanted to ask you how being part of the project has changed you. We've seen an enormous change, but in many ways. So how the project's been for you? Because I think it's about 2 years now.
Yeah, I went to see the show. I forgot what it's called. Vodka Hunters, and a friend of mine was appearing in that, Gary Pierre, who's part of the project, and he just said, I think you'd be really good at it, knowing me through, the recovery circle that we were in, and I just thought, yeah, that would be so cool. I've got loads of stories, and just ended up going to the workshops and ended up being in a play and ended up being in The Guardian, man. That's pretty cool. Not that I read newspapers, but, it's still quite amazing. When you Google me, the first thing that comes up is Shelley Mitchell, poet from Bournemouth. Who would have thought?
Did you not have that in your life plan?
No. I don't know. Lately, I've been thinking I went rogue. I decided that at 17, I didn't understand a bit why you'd work, go home, eat, shit, repeat. You know, like I didn't understand why we were doing that. I had like a bit of an internal crisis and ended up going rogue. And when I say go rogue, I went for it. You know, like I ended up being a heroin addict for many years, and I didn't understand the simplicity of like just going to work and coming home. Like all of my idols had ended up being like smackheads, and I thought that was the way to be. But it was very much not like what my idols went through, I don't think. But and I never liked being part of anything. You know, like at school, I didn't want to commit to one group. In my using, I didn't want to commit to a group of like addicts. I'd just wander like a bit of a nomad. And in my recovery, I definitely didn't want to be part of a recovery group. So for me to come here and like meet other people that are kind of nomads, it's really special. You know, like there's like expectations of me to write, and I think it's good for that, because it's good to have that expectation on me, because that way I have to write something. You know, like I won't do it if I'm just on my own, but because there's expectation, it makes me write and write quite meaningful stuff.
And what about the performing? Because did you ever think about performing? Because your performing's coming more and more, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be like a rock star.
You are.
You know, like I was in a band when I was little, and we were really shit, but we thought we were really good, and yeah, so I'd had that kind of experience of being the centre of attention. But as I grew older, I didn't want to be the centre of attention. But I think like I just wanted to pick up a guitar, but I could never do that. So this is my way of kind of saying fuck you to the world, I guess.
And it's still sort of articulation of your inner world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is what making art is about for me. How does your life and your lived experience inform your work? So when I say your work, that's your writing and your performance now as well.
I think if you met me, you'd think I was quite a happy-go-lucky person. Like, I don't, unless, like, yeah, I think you think, oh, she's just smiley all the time, she's quite fun to be around. But I think there's, this is like my secret. You know, it's there's darkness in it, you know, like when I was a kid, like, other people watching, I don't know, like cartoons and that, I'd be watching Tim Burton films. I've always kind of been, you know, like the trapdoor, you know, like all like spooky stuff. And I think I've always been sort of attracted to that.
So that was your interest. And then what about your actual experiences? So is all your writing about your personal life and your personal experiences?
I think most of it is, yeah. I think I'd like to get to a point where I can write like fictional stuff or non-fictional stuff even, but I'm not there yet. I think there's still more stories to be told.
Mm. And how does writing and performing and being part of the project, how does it change your ideas about that experience, about that lived experience? Does it help you? Does it reshape that experience for you?
Okay, so there's like a few musicians out there that write stuff that changed my life. You know, like Leonard Cohen, Masters of War by Bob Dylan, anything by Pink Floyd, like those sort of, you know, those like heavy hitting, like the underdog songs, like Let's Fight for the Unheard. I think that this is like, obviously never going to write a hit like that, but this is my version of that, you know, where songs that like literally help me through the gutter, and they stay with you, don't they? Like they're the only things that don't leave, like music. So,
yeah, that's really interesting. So those are like external pieces of art that you've had a relationship with, and now you're creating your own work.
Yeah.
So is that tapping into the same feeling that's helping you through by writing?
I feel like I'm fighting for the underdog still. You know, like I might not be. I am boring now. I do work 9 to 5, and I do have to pay rent and all the stuff that society tells you to do. But this is my way of giving back to the people that are still stuck there, I suppose, and that even if you had done the most disgusting things that people would spit on you for, like you can change your life. And I'm living proof of that, I suppose.
Yeah, the power of redemption.
Yeah.
That's right. So when you're writing, are you writing for you and other people?
Yeah.
I really love that you're speaking to other people through your work.
I mean, you know, like the homeless, the drug addicts, the mental health, the prostitutes, like all of those people. We didn't wake up and say, oh, I'm going to be a smackhead, like, and steal off my family and go to rehab 7 times. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want to work for a living, but I didn't want to end up there, so I think that those people need a voice, and you give that. And like, my family worries sometimes, genuinely worry that I'm still living in the past by doing that. But if I can help one person, like going to see Gary perform, he helped me. If I could get someone else to hear me and then come to the project, then I've done my job, sort of thing.
Great, so it's like a chain effect. And is, when you're actually writing, I'm really interested in this sort of relationship between having lived experience and when we write about it, does it help us understand that better? Where we've come from and what's happened to us? Is it cathartic? Does it make you feel better about yourself to do it?
It does. I mean, there was a piece of... I like to write letters. I think there's a freedom in that. And as you know, I've written quite a few letters, and there was one that I've written to a guy who kind of enabled me to use but kept trying to save me. I suppose you'd call him a sugar daddy. And after having written the letter to him, in a piece of writing, I realised that we were both victims, and I never felt like that before. I never felt like in that relationship, I never felt he was a victim, but he was a victim of my manipulation, as I was of his. Mm. So there's definitely some learning from writing, I wrote a letter to my former self, and I realised that after writing that letter that I had a lot more forgiving to do. It wasn't until we stood here one day and it got played back to me as part of the process that I realised, shit, Shelley, you're in pain still. There's some deep, dark. You've still got a lot of forgiving to do.
Mm. And so that the project does. I mean, obviously, we don't get involved with all of that side, all that therapy. I mean, we're in the business of making art, but I think it just has such a profound effect on the audiences, but also on the people doing the writing, which can be incredibly constructive.
Yeah.
Shelley, we talked earlier about lived experience, and you write in the most extraordinary way. It's incredibly explicit and touching. It moves us all. We've talked about your lived experience and how you write about your lived experience and your feelings about that. I just wonder if we can hear one of these pieces that you've written, an extraordinary piece called Spencer and the Stairs.
Spencer and the Stairs. In the only Jamaican pub in Luton, you stood among the cannabis smoke, pool cue in hand. You looked like a short, chap version of Jimi Hendrix. You asked to borrow £1 and I knew I had to have you. You stood a foot shorter and 20 years older than me. You winked and said, I'm not afraid of heights. Although the smallest person in the room, in my mind you become the largest. But heights didn't matter that night on the stairs in the high-rise flats. Even 2 stairs up, you towered over me. I didn't see it coming. My face connected with the bottom of your Dr. Martens. You made animal noises. I made out the word slut. My legs gave way first, but it was the crack of my jaw on the concrete that vibrated throughout the tower block. I lay motionless, a trick I'd learned. I lay with the pain and held it close. I tasted rust and blood, but I lay perfectly still. I sensed your face next to mine before I could smell the rum and anger. I hoped you still loved me. Fear and piss filled my nostrils and my head cried blood over the stone steps. The floor began to shift in soft waves beneath my 8-stone body. Your footsteps faded away after your parting gift of a kick to my face. My eyes stayed shut. I drifted and time flew like water. I remember no more. Hospital lights roused me from unconsciousness, my secrets hidden well beneath my black eyes. I try to make a joke with the nurses, but the only punchline is my swollen face. I find an abandoned wheelchair and make my way to the payphone away from the doctors. I hold my breath until you answer, and then I tell you I'm sorry. Yeah.
That was extraordinary. I think that turn at the end of that piece sort of literally turns my emotions as I hear it, and it's so deeply honest and shocking and truthful. And I think you're right. You're speaking for so many people, Shelley, in your work. You're not just speaking for you, are speaking for you, but you're speaking for so many people. And the project, as you know, is about unheard voices, and that kind of sums it up for me. What are your plans, Shelley, for this work? What are your plans for the next few years? We've just got 5 years worth of funding for this project, so we can all dream now. We're sitting in a recording studio that we built ourselves during lockdown with volunteer labour from recycled materials.
This is properly cool.
So you can have some dreams, and our job is to fulfil those. So, any plans?
I'd like to get more confident in my writing. I'd like to have a shot at singing. I'd like to continue building my friendships that I've made. Like they're probably what keeps me coming back more than the writing, which is amazing because I'm quite insular person until you get past like the bitch face. Yeah. I'm quite kind, and I think it gives me an arena to really work on female friendships and male friendships because that stuff all goes when you're in the shit, like building relationships, proper relationships.
So that's on you, really, those kind of relationships, yeah. And I know that you said at the beginning that it was very hard to have relationships with women.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And there's so many women involved in the project, actually.
Yeah, there is, and they're all great. Yeah. And I get a bit silly sometimes with my compliments, but that's... But I think domestic abuse is something that needs to be talked about, and I consciously didn't write about my drug use during that piece of writing that you just heard. It's all very well people saying, "Oh, just leave them." I'd heard that 100 times, but if you don't have the self-worth to do that, then you're not going to be able to. And
absolutely, and the really difficult thing is, how do we give these women self-worth? How do we give people self-worth at the beginning, and especially recording this week, where there's been such a movement generally about women and abuse.
Yeah.
It feels very moving to hear that piece of work this week.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, and it's a conversation that we need to have with men and women, and certainly with children, to be changing how women are seen and how women see themselves.
Yeah, if you've only known toxic relationship, every relationship you're going to get in is going to be toxic. Until you kind of love yourself a little bit more. And I think this project has helped me realise that my experiences don't have to be secrets, it will help someone in the long run.
Yeah, I love this, that you're speaking to other people.
Yeah.
Lockdown's been difficult.
Yeah.
COVID has thrown the spanner in the works. For you, how has that been?
If I can be really honest here, I see the world quite divided, by the rich and the poor, and I'm always for the poor. So when COVID happened, I thought, oh, nice, a bit of mass suffering, let them feel a little bit of pain for a little while, because it sort of teaches you something, it teaches you to be humble. But now I just feel sorry for everyone. There is a wave of depression on every person I come across. And it's just been really, really difficult.
Yeah, I think it really has.
And
I know at the beginning that you were writing, weren't you? At the beginning, that very first lockdown, that you were writing a lot, and we went online and we were working together.
Yeah.
An organisation called Paper Chains set up a fantastic scheme where it was all about unheard voices, actually. So it was people who'd really been marginalised and had experience of prison or homelessness. And they had a writing competition, really, or submissions. You could submit your writing. You wrote a piece for that and won an award.
I did.
Yeah, and hopefully there's going to be an exhibition or something. There's a plan for the future. You wrote an amazing piece, which is very definitely about quarantine, and I just wondered, could you perform it for us now?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Great.
My confession. While others use days of quarantine constructively, I used my working from home time to research the grunge bands of Seattle from the late 80s. 3 days into this new obsession, I begin to feel a new hole, an ache on the inside. The whirl of guitars, that sound, that drone, the noise that only a heroin addict can hear. My eyes grow heavy with memory. My mouth opens, bending at the sides, and my head tilts back softly as I listen. But there is no wave beneath me holding my body from falling into a waiting early grave. The guitars don't sound like the music wants it to. The fluffy tar clouds in heaven don't call to cushion me. I'm falling, and there is nothing to soften the blow. I'm sober, and I can't hear the sound. The world has its brakes on, and my days are like my days of old. I have no responsibilities and no reason to get up. Oblivion costs £10 and lives on the empty streets of Boscombe Crescent. I dream of Lexington with poets past, Seattle with dead grunge gods, Texas with the ghost of outlaw folk musicians. I'm no longer excited by being free and detoxified. I take sleeping tablets, but the music doesn't sound the same. Quarantine holds no weight. I've been preparing for this for years, and hell has always been more appealing to me. People often ask me what heroin feels like. That is the whole point. It feels like nothing.
That's an incredible piece of writing. It's totally informed by music, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that I was sat on my sofa and I had been listening, and it was just like that oppressiveness of not being allowed out of your house, having to work from home, and there's not much work to do from home, So I think that I was feeling quite depressed, and I was feeling quite like I did in my using, like it was cold, so I had cut like a bed sheet up on the window, I was doing everything that I'd done in my using, but not using drugs. So I thought I thought I'd listen to some Velvet Underground, and I realised that it didn't sound the same, and I was really upset about it. And there's this song by the Velvet Underground, and it's like Shiny, that one, and there's like this howl in it. That's the only way to describe it. It's like a drone, and it's like, and when you're high, it is like the music is just perfect, like every note. But when I was sober, it just sounded like fucking noise. And I thought, what has happened to one of my favourite bands, And so I wrote this piece, and I think it was a confession that I'm not doing okay, that I'm fucked. There was a line in it like that we took out, but I still love that line. I don't want any religious moron to try and save me. This is how I feel. Let me feel it, and I'll get on with it. But it was just everything. Every word in there is me. And it was hardly edited at all. It was just poured out.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations on the award, and it'd be really interesting to see what Paper Chains do with all those entries. Anything else, Shelley, you wanted to say?
Just that if you don't think you're artistic, and you don't think that you've got any of, that you wouldn't be interested in doing like this, just try writing a few lines a day. I like to write in the bath. It's really mad, but some of my best lines come from sitting in the bath, thinking, and it's really cathartic, and I think that everybody should have a go.
Would you call yourself an artist?
Oh, I'd like to. Yeah, I think there's definitely, I suppose I am. I don't really say nice things about myself, but I think we're all artists, and we've all got our own niche. And mine is the darkness, and I'll stay there for now.
And we'll embrace that.
Yeah.
Shelley, thank you so much.
That's cool.
Thanks.